afternoon, everybody. This is Bonnie Vandermeulen, Training Coordinator for Wisconsin Facets. On behalf of our entire Wisconsin Facets staff, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. Our webinar today is entitled Family Engagement Within Wisconsin's Framework for Equitable Multi-Level System of Supports. Our presenters today are Jennifer Grenke and Dan Seaman. Jennifer has been with the Wisconsin RTI Center since 2011 as a North Regional Technical Assistance Coordinator, a PBIS Tier 1 trainer, and a Family Engagement statewide team member. She enjoys assisting Wisconsin schools to develop and sustain an equitable multi-level system of support to ensure the success of all students. This is Jennifer's 34th year in education with a passion for developing strong partnerships between schools and family. Dan Seaman is a Regional Technical Coordinator for the Wisconsin RTI Center. He serves the East Region, which includes CESA 6, 7, and 8, and has an emphasis on academic implementation of a multi-level system of support. He also is part of the Family Engagement and Continuous Improvement teams at the Center. This is his 10th year with the Center, and prior to this role, he was a nationally certified school psychologist for 10 years. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Dan Seaman and Jennifer Grenke.
Thank you, Bonnie. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Family Engagement in Wisconsin's Framework for an Equitable Multi-Level System of Support. And we're really glad that you're here with us today. And before we move on, I just wanted to extend and acknowledge all of Bonnie's support through the last couple of years to be able to present to Wisconsin Facets, and also Ann Zilke, who's helping running things behind the scenes today. As we go throughout today, we're going to take a couple breaks for questions, and I just wanted to let you know that you can send us an email, a tweet, if you'd like additional assistance, or if you want help to support what you've learned today in your organization, or if you're with a school, just reach out to us. We're really happy to help you. Next slide. So we do want to start just taking a moment to reflect and recognize the land that we rest on, and the people who cared for this land before and after it was stolen through colonization. The land that I'm currently on is the ancestral land of the Menominee Nation, and the Wisconsin RTI Center acknowledges and honors the inherent sovereignty of each of the American Indian nations of Wisconsin. The Wisconsin RTI Center will continue to cultivate and maintain our ongoing collaboration and partnership with all of the American Indian nations, the people, and the communities of Wisconsin. The next slide. And I just wanted to let you know these are our outcomes for today. So we just want to make sure that we stick true to what we have promised. So one of them is to understand where family engagement fits within that vision of an equitable multi-level system of support. And then also to explore Wisconsin resources that improve family engagement in schools and districts. Next slide. So as we begin this session, I just want to share this quote with you, and I'm going to give you a moment to read it. We'll just take 40 seconds to read this quote. This is taken from Anthony Brick's book, Organizing Schools for Improvement. And the research that's highlighted in here behind engaging families, it encompasses many schools throughout the nation over 10 years of time. And what he found is that there's 5 key areas that support student success. Leadership acting as a catalyst for change, parent and community ties, professional capacity, a student-centered learning climate, and the ambitious instruction. And all of these together in unison create that enhanced student engagement and expanded academic learning. He said that they did several iterations of this research through their inquiry, and they'd seek out information on each of these pillars being left out, strengthened or weakened. And what they found is that none of these 5 key areas played a more dominant role than any of the others. They work in unison and they need to be woven together. And his research noted that the quality of the relationships built with families was an integral part of that improvement. There needed to be trust and care shown by the school staff in order for parents and families to feel comfortable sharing their ideas and concerns, to sit at the table with the school team. And I just wanted to let you know that a lot of our content within these slides and family engagement practices are supported through the Department of Education's dual capacity framework, and they're all based upon this research that we're sharing from this slide as well. I just wanted to go to this slide and talk about the National PBIS Center recently released this practice guide. It was actually last summer, but it's specifically focusing on enhancing family school collaboration with diverse families. This brief is really designed to help inform your school leaders about how to intentionally collaborate with families and how you can create those environments in which educators work alongside the families on behalf of the students that they serve. So the authors detail some specific fundamental attitudes and practices for creating those equitable collaborations between educators and families, and specifically families of those historically marginalized learners. So the first area is the educators to think of this as a privilege and a responsibility to deliver the promise of education and to create conditions where children feel safe. They should focus on the stories behind those statistics that we see. Knowing the students' names as names and how to pronounce them, and not just the numbers, the number of students that they're serving. Thinking through like how they support their families, and then their family stories as well. Educators need to be willing to operate from the with perspective by building bridges and crossing borders to cultivate that welcoming environment for all of the families. And then also understanding the community from which the families come, being authentic and intentional about wanting to know what school means to families and how they can engage with them. Staff need to connect the school to the community, so they need to be visible in the community outside of that school setting. So not just holding school events in different places where parents are, but also attending some of those community events where parents are. Places where we can think that there are community events, like community centers, housing complexes, in local industry, and then places of worship. When we think about going to those places, but then also bringing some of those school community events to those as well. There's a way that you can ask your cultural liaisons or community leaders on how best to foster positive relationships. I'm sorry, my throat's dry. Staff also need to commit to meaningful homeschool communication. So thinking through how do families best receive information, or how would they like to best receive that information? Making that two-way communication. So thinking some families prefer email or phone, maybe mail, face-to-face or communication apps. We need to find out what's the best way for all of the families. And we can't just think that if we ask them at the beginning of the year, that's going to be the same in December and the same in March. Like we should check a couple times throughout the year, what's the best way that we can reach you and that you can reach back to us. So we have that bi-directional conversation. I did want to talk just a little bit, Karen Mapp, if you know anything about her, she's supported a lot of the work for that dual capacity framework for the Department of Education. And she talks about those 3 glows before grow. So she talks about those 3 positives before a negative. And we do that with families as well. So even when we're talking about that communication piece, we need to make sure that we're communicating with them in positive manners, more so than we are with any of the negative. And then also developing those systemic processes for shared decision making. So seeking input versus feedback. Input is co-collaborating, creating, versus giving us, what do you think of this after we've already created it? So seeking that input, getting involvement on those decision-making committees and boards, collaborating with that diverse group of families and equity experts to create that egalitarian policies, the structures, by identifying those implicit and explicit forms of inclusion. And then reviewing your staff and student handbooks, your code of conduct, the schedules, the academic programs, just to keep an eye on the current practices that may unintentionally marginalize our learners. Dan, you can go to that next slide. So additionally, I just want to point out the NYU Metropolitan Center for Research on Equity and the Transformation of Schools, Culturally Responsive Student Engagement and Family Engagement explicitly call for schooling to be a site for sustaining rather than eradicating. They call for that sustaining the cultural ways of being of communities of color by fostering the linguistic, literate, and cultural diversity. I apologize. As part of schooling for that, the positive social transformation and revitalization. Cannot do any of this without seeing our students and families as assets to teaching and learning. And Dan, you can go to the next slide. And the research that we found throughout the years is really clear the benefits of that strong systemic family engagement and having those practices for all school stakeholders. Students in schools with the strong systemic family engagement show significantly increased academic achievement. They have better attendance, reduced school dropout rates, improved social behaviors, and improved peer affiliations. And then there's also benefits for parents and teachers. So for parents and family members, it shows increased efficacy and role construction and improved trust of their teachers. And for teachers, it gives them strong systemic. When teachers use strong systemic family engagement practices, they actually have significantly improved job satisfaction and they stay in their schools longer because they've got these great relationships with their families. And then administrators also can demonstrate significantly higher levels of job satisfaction as well. And when you think about that, the families are happy and the teachers are happy and the students are doing well. Yeah, everything's going to work so much better. Dan, next slide. Thank you. And so finally, we get to this, the family engagement within the equitable multi-level system of support. So this is a graphic that represents that framework, and this is what our work in the RTI Center is all based on. So if you look at this graphic, equity is at that very center of the framework, and it's embedded into all of those other key features to challenge and change our inequitable access, opportunity, and the outcomes experienced by learners currently underserved in the Wisconsin schools. If we think about the academic, behavioral, social, and emotional teaching and supports delivered, it needs to be through that high quality instruction. And then also incorporating the strategic use of data for continuous improvement, which is a huge push right now in the state of Wisconsin. And then thinking through that collaboration piece among the staff, the learners, the families, communities, to make that complex work of system change really possible. Also thinking through that continuum of supports for learners, starting with that strong universal support for all students. And then the implementation through the district, the schools, the teams, and classrooms to promote consistency and effectiveness across all of the systems of support. And not just vertically, but also, horizontally and vertically. And then we have that strong shared leadership and that positive culture that provides the context and the necessary relationships and that base necessary within schools and districts to grow and sustain their implementation. And then finally, that use of the evidence-based practices, which all of these are part of that, to ensure that school and district efforts are positively impacting our learner outcomes. And these key system features inform and impact each other. They all have to work together. They can't just pick and choose which pieces the school is working on. They have to simultaneously develop each of these key system features. And with that, I'm going to hand this back to Dan.
Thanks, Jen. So here's that visual of the Wisconsin RTI Center's framework, and we'll begin to focus on family and community engagement. Also want to highlight equity as another one of the key system features because you can't do really good family engagement without having an equity mindset and an equity lens around how you're supporting families in the community. So I'm going to give you all a minute to just read through the 3 E's which make up the Family and Community Engagement Key System feature. So they are embrace, engage, and empower. So I'm going to give you all about a minute to read through, and then I'll proceed. So as we go through embrace and engage and empower, when we're talking about embracing, one of the key points is that schools recognize families as the first teachers and the foremost experts on their child. With engagement, family perspectives are intentionally sought through two-way communication, paying particular attention to family input from populations underserved by the school and district. And with empower, schools and districts empower families through respectful relationships with information and resources, and by connecting families with community assets. When we think about embracing, going back, it's about getting to know others, understanding their cultures, values, and appreciating them for who they are and what they bring to the table. And most importantly, recognizing and acknowledging that families are the first teachers and foremost experts on their child. With engaging, what we're working on is developing bi-directional relationships with families and caregivers, supporting each other, learning and growing together in order to best support in each and every student. And with empowerment is where families, students, and educators collaborate collectively to build a better system by learning from each other. When we get to this place of empowering, our schools need to be ready to change and grow based on input from families that families bring to the table as co-creators of the system. So this slide here has a number of different layers. So bear with me while I work on unpacking them. So the purple arrow at the top of this graphic is really looking at has the words lower impact to higher impact. So that is a continuum that shows what practices in the purple box have a lower impact on student success to a higher impact of student success. Something we need. So the orange arrows at the bottom have the 3 E's, so embrace, engage, and empower, and are all about assessing where we are currently at in our continuum with partnering with families. Something to keep in mind is that we never truly arrive at a pinnacle point where we say, yep, we've done it, we're there, because every year schools will have new families, new staff, and new initiatives that start in the school. With that, we may need to end up at embracing new families, engaging them in new initiatives, and empowering them to be co-creators. Within the graphic, there are strategies that align with both the impact as well as areas of the implementation, such as embrace, engage, or empower. When we get to the strategies that are on the right side under higher impact, these are strategies that have proven to have more impact on student success. Notice that these are the strategies that empower families. As you can see, practices under higher impact are asset-based practices. What makes a practice asset-based is that you're seeking and valuing strengths the students and families bring. You intentionally seek out the strengths to build partnerships with them. A final note is that the boxes in bold, such as such as these, are strategies that have been highlighted by the Promoting Excellence for All document developed through focus groups led by the DPI. These bold boxes have strategies that were identified by families, caregivers, and family organizations as strategies that they prefer and want schools to utilize. Notice where the majority of these bold boxes land. And as you do have access to a PDF of these slides, the links that are highlighted on here, on these, those should take you to resources that'll help you utilize those strategies in schools and districts. And I'm just going to do a brief pause here for if there's any questions or comments, and I'll ask Bonnie to call those out if there are any.
So there's a question that I think continues to come up over and over again, and that's when teachers want to involve parents in planning and in what goes on in the classroom and part of the school planning itself. How do you handle those administrators who really don't want parents to be present?
So there's a number of different reasons that we can provide. So based on research, when you have family members as part of like your universal team, if you're looking at a multi-level system of support, number one, that's something that's part of the key features and part of the standards of implementing like an academic system of multi-level system of supports or PBIS. We need to have family input in order to be doing the framework well. So that's one of the reasons. Another reason is that if you have family members as part of that universal team, not only does it help the family members provide input and feedback and also learn about the system, but also having family members as part of those teams, the teams themselves stick to their agenda a lot more tightly, and they don't devolve into issues where you're talking about individual students, but rather focusing on the improvement in the entire system.
And Bonnie, I just wanted to piggyback off of what Dan shared. If you're running into that, if someone's running into where they're having a hard time being able to support their administrative level because they really don't want that family engagement, that's part of the work of the RTI Center, like part of that positive culture and family engagement within an EMLSS. We can definitely come in and support a school to get to that place. I know it can be hard because some schools will say we're not implementing an EMLSS, but as a state, we really do want to move to that place. So as a family member or community member of a school, you can definitely reach out to us and we can develop some supports.
And that, I think that's good information for everybody to know. So thank you, and thank you for the questioner there. Thanks a lot. That's it.
Okay, thank you. So as we're looking at the key system feature, as part of that feature, we have defining elements of family and community engagement. So if you think back to the slide, the previous slide where we had those high and low impact strategies, you can see all of these elements were displayed within the graphic. As we move, share more information, you'll see each of these elements play out in schools and districts. And we'll also provide some more specific information about how these elements show up. Some of the things that we really want to highlight is making sure that the school is a welcoming environment for all families. Being respectful of families, home cultures, values, and languages. Part of that, making sure it's more welcoming, is that families can see themselves, their children, their language, and their culture within the school building. And then we also want to make sure that families have meaningful participants in school level decision making, not only just decisions that involve their child, but also part of that decision making process around supports for the school. Making sure that we're partnering authentically to find solutions and making decisions that impact their child's learning. And then making sure that we also partner with community agencies and create more comprehensive and accessible supports for learners and families that go beyond the limits of the school day and the school year. And also making sure that we're making that effort to build cultural and linguistic bridges between families and the system. So as we're looking at helping schools involve families in the community more authentically, the National Implementation Research Network, which is one of our national partners that we work with at the RTI Center, they have this graphic which comes from a resource around stakeholder engagement and how to guide school teams through engaging members of the community and families. So we want to make sure that they're bringing all stakeholders to the table. So having stakeholders that have been directly impacted by the issue. So making sure that having people who at the table who demographically reflect the target population. So if the school is having disproportionality in terms of how students with different demographic groups, such as emerging bilingual students or students that are historically marginalized groups, making sure that those families are part of the decision-making process. Also having people who work directly with the target population at the table, and people who grew up or live in the neighborhood that is being served. So making sure that we have community members as part of the decision-making process. At the RTI Center, we recognize the parents are the first and foremost teachers of the children, and that we need to have them at the table in order to provide cultural relevance to our decisions in order to support each and every child. And then in order to realize the benefits of implementing it and an equitable multi-level system of support, schools must assess the fidelity of their system to ensure that they are implementing the key system features of the system. This slide has the items of the tiered fidelity inventory, which measures the fidelity of how a school is implementing tiers 1, 2, and 3 of the framework for school-wide positive behavior interventions and supports. At the universal level, items 1.1, which is team composition, and it looks at having that universal team that includes a school administrator, a family member, and when we say family member, we mean a family member of not someone who is employed by the school district, and individuals to provide the behavior expertise, coaching experience, knowledge of the student academic and behavior patterns, and knowledge about the operations of the school across grade levels and programs. And for high schools, having a student representation as part of that universal team. For item 1.11, we're looking at making sure that we have stakeholder input, such as students, families, and community members, to provide input on the universal foundations. So having input around expectations for behavior and social emotional learning, consequences, and acknowledgments at least every 12 months. And then for item 1.15 or 1.15, As part of that annual evaluation, the Tier 1 or universal team documents fidelity and effectiveness, including on academic outcomes of Tier 1 practices at least annually, and including year-by-year comparisons that are shared with stakeholders, including staff, families, community, and the district in a usable format. Also, you do have items that are related to Tier 2 implementation of PBIS and Tier 3 items, Tier 3 implementation of PBIS that are also there. The School-Wide Implementation Review, or the SIR, measures a school's fidelity of implementation of Wisconsin's framework for an equitable, multi-level system of support through the content areas of reading or mathematics. The SIR has a family engagement subscale, which measures the extent to which families are informed and understand the system and collaborate with the school to develop support plans for their children. So having items that are looking at the extent to which the school is using a process to inform parents and guardians about our grade level or course benchmarks, collaborating with and engaging with families and guardians for students receiving support at the Tier 2 and Tier 3 level, making sure that families are informed and understand universal screening results, and engaging families and parents and guardians as active team participants at each step of the problem-solving process for students receiving support at a selected or a Tier 2 or a Tier 3 level of support. So several years ago, the family engagement team, as part of the state leadership team for the Wisconsin RTI Center, created this resource that lists family engagement agencies and supports for families in order to improve partnerships with families and schools. So I'm just going to, on the PDF slides, the link should be embedded to this. So I'm just going to take you there.
And I just want to point out it's embedded on the graph. I said I just wanted to point out that the link is embedded in the graph.
Yep. So on the back side of this resource, we have all of the, or a number, it may not be all of the resources for families, but it has key websites for looking at how to engage families throughout the school system. So having modules around trauma-sensitive training and supports, having the belief statements and strategies to improve family engagement throughout the state, leading by convening, which is a blueprint for authentic family engagement, also having resources from statewide organizations such as WISPE, Wisconsin Facets, and Wisconsin's Family Ties, also looking at Title I supports from the Department of Public Instruction, the link that we referenced earlier with the Promoting Excellence for All, the e-course that looks at family engagement to help improve equity gaps for underserved students. Jenna, are there other ones that we specifically want to call out?
Yeah, I was just going to point out if towards the bottom is the United States Department of Education, that dual capacity building framework, which I had referenced a little earlier, is probably about 10 from.
That'd be this one. Yep.
And I did want to point out there's a key at the top, so then you can see like which tiers that they're supported through those organizations, like who is that specific resource for, and then the type of resource that it is. So you can see that at the top.
So with that, I'm going to carry on. One of the resources that is relatively new from the State Department of Public Instruction is the creation of mindset cards. And these are like, I don't want to say cards, but like they're strategies around coaching around with a progress toward equity. So these cards are intended to support day-to-day work of systemic change to advance equity. They represent mindsets that are crucial to equitably change, but are often missing from generic improvement models. For an equity framework, such as an equitable multi-level system of support, they add key mindsets for sustainable practical change. To improve framework, they add key elements of equity-related transformation on all levels: personal, interpersonal, organizational, instructional. So, and we do have a link that takes you to the cards, but the way that they're organized is that you have themes around inclusion and connection. So having cards around dialogue, belonging, and co-creation. Blue cards, such as the color that you see here, are around recalibrating quote unquote normal. So humility, people over systems, and having an asset mindset. And then dark blue has cards that looking at sustainable change, such as institutional responsibility, supporting adaptive change, and alignment and realignment of the system. So as an example, here's a part of the co-creation mindset card, again, which is looking at the inclusion and connection theme. Co-creation means collaboration as equal partners with other stakeholder groups. Each of our individual perspectives is limited, but we don't know what we don't know, so we need each other. Each of us has a crucial piece. For example, our students, families, and communities know their needs and assets better than anyone else does. Another example is that I have here is from the belonging mindset card, which again is part of that inclusion and connection theme. If inclusion is shallow and doesn't provide people from marginalized groups with voice, choice, and power, the dominant voices will remain dominant and change can't happen. So I invite you all to take some time and for the schools that you are working with or schools that you're connected with, think about the mindset cards and how you can share these to help them really take in a deeper look around how they're equitably involving students from historically marginalized groups and really focusing on all meaning all. And with that being said, we will bring us to the end of our session, and we do have plenty of time for questions and answers. So Bonnie, if there are any questions or comments or answers,
So
we will.
I have one question here. How would the two of you recommend to a school district that really doesn't have as much parent engagement as other school districts? What would you recommend to start? How can they get going on inclusion of family engagement?
So one of the things that I would recommend first is really looking at who in the school are going to be allies in this work, because there may be like a family school liaison, or a lot of times school counselors or other people service providers such as school psychologists or school social workers. A lot of those people might be more inclined to kind of be allies in helping support the work. So that might be one way to kind of start pushing and help asking questions to really provide more movement. And Jen, do you have other ideas or strategies?
Yeah, I was just thinking that sometimes it's like that chicken or the egg, like, is it the school or the family? Like, who does the pushing? And with family engagement, sometimes there's a culture in the school that it's never been, like they haven't engaged families, so that's so foreign to them. And that's where like we can come in and we can support them because it's a mindset. Like Dan shared those mindset cards, and just for them to understand that times of change, people have different lived experiences, and how can we help the schools to see that this input from families and that co-creation with families is going to produce more and better outcome. I shouldn't say more, but better outcomes for students with their involvement. So, and it's not something that is, in my experience, hasn't been a quick overnight um, process. That it takes a while because you have to work on people's mindsets on that involvement with families, because historically we haven't done that. And some schools are phenomenal at it. We find schools that are doing an awesome job. And then there's others that, and like I said, they just have not had that experience. So we have to help them understand it.
And another thing to kind of help support is a lot of times educators like to know about the research. And so having like this slide, which is in the PDF slides that you have that you're able to download, showing that there's benefit to having strong, sustainable family engagement, such as it not only benefits students, where we're seeing increased achievement, increased attendance, reducing dropout rates, improving social behavior, and improving peer affiliations, but we're also seeing benefits for families and for staff inside the school. So teachers show higher levels of job satisfaction and fewer transfer requests. Additionally, administrators are also seeing higher levels of job satisfaction, and you're seeing them stay in their positions or in their schools longer when they have that strong family engagement as part of their daily practice.
Dan, as you brought up this slide, something that occurred to me is one of the researchers that you're seeing on here, Garbage, is Andy Garbage from UW-Medicine. He actually is doing several different research projects throughout Wisconsin. So, and what he's doing is research specifically to family engagement. So if you have a school that has not engaged with family, that might be a place they could reach out to, or they could connect with us, and we could connect them to Andy, because he's always looking for districts and schools that they can support. And there is a monetary benefit, I believe, when they're part of that research. So, and they support them, like they're constantly working with the school to increase family engagement. So that was just something that I thought of when I saw his name.
Well, that's some great information to know. Thank you both. Do either of you have any closing statements that you'd like to make at this time? Because we don't have any other questions.
I don't think so. One thing that we would like to share, at least, is you can always look at our website, which is wisconsinrticenter.org, and we do have resources there that are around family engagement. So if you go to the search bar and just search for family engagement, we do have a number of different resources. So we do have direct links to the Guide to Family Engagement Resources in Wisconsin, Promoting Excellence for All. Also, we do have a series of webinars that Jen and I have done several years ago. You can also view to help the schools and districts that you're connected with. And then also we do have some schools that are highlighting their own family engagement, such as Butamore Elementary School in Menasha. They have done a lot of work around improving family engagement as part of their system. And also one of our new school stories, Maryland Montessori out of Milwaukee Public Schools.
Thank you. That's some great information for people to have, so I appreciate it. So thank you both very much for your presentation today. We greatly appreciate that. We appreciate the time that everybody has taken to participate in our webinar for today. That will end our webinar for today. Please be reminded that Wisconsin Facets has over 80 to 100 scheduled trainings and webinars. And actually, our webinar series will be out and on our web calendar shortly for 2023. So please feel free to check our website calendar and register for any of the upcoming trainings that you may be interested in. And please watch for the short evaluation that'll be coming your way after today's live presentation. Again, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Jennifer. We greatly appreciate it. Happy holidays to everybody, and thank you for your participation today. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Jen. I'll send you an email.
Thanks, Bonnie. Sounds good.
Bye-bye.